Alright, what's up guys? So today we're gonna go for a little bit of a different video. Blizzard just dropped a new patch. We have a PTR patch right now on the test server. And it is a pretty interesting one. Whereas in previous patches Blizzard has been mainly focusing on hero changes, we now have some very specific map changes. I'm not gonna go over those today though, but we have some global changes that are very interesting and could have massive impacts on the general gameplay. So I want to touch upon those real quickly and see what you guys think. How is this going to affect the game? What is going to happen here? And then obviously once that the test is over, once that the patch hits live, we're going to see that also in tournaments. And this might have a pretty big impact on how the game is going to be played and how the teams are dealing with structures in particular. So let's jump straight in and have a look at the patch notes. So, as I already said, the patch dropped yesterday, or the patch notes, and there are a couple of different things. They have a couple of hero changes, they have map updates, but we are gonna go into the more general updates here. So, as you can see right there, we have now a pretty interesting change. Forts, Keeps, and the core will now grant allied heroes that take damage in their radius armor for 4 seconds. Now, this effect is only, first of all, it has a 4-second cooldown and can only be granted to one single hero per structure. So that's already kind of interesting. But it makes it, for example, for solo laner, a lot easier when you're getting ganked. So while this effect is, or while this armor is an effect, enemy heroes that attack the target will be slowed down by 20%. So what we're essentially seeing there is that when you are getting, when the opponent dives onto you, when you are in range of your forts, keeps, and the core, then you have a bit of a defender's advantage that you can use there. So in a one-on-one situation, for example, this is already quite helpful. It's a bit less likely for your opponent to just simply dive onto you, and also like 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 1 ganks are less likely to be successful, to be impactful. That slow is also something that can be pretty brutal. A 20% slow is nothing to sneeze at, and if there is, for example, a reaction from the opponent's team when you're trying to make a move against a single hero on a lane, then this can also lead to a counter kill. So it's already interesting that they're trying to make it a bit easier for the sole defenders here, but they are also offsetting this a bit, because when people were looking at this change, the first thing that they came to their mind is they're like, oh my god, Blizzard is trying to make the games longer. They are putting some things into play where now all of a sudden we might have much longer games than before. But there's a lot of other changes here, and let's go over them real quickly. Forts, Keeps, in the core will no longer prioritize an enemy hero when an allied hero is attacked. So that's also a pretty interesting change. I mean, this was obviously always a thing that made this a little bit safer for you. So they're kind of swapping some of the things out here. And this is an interesting change that offsets the first one just a little bit. But it gets a lot more interesting than later on. But there are a couple of other changes. Mercenary camps now spawns 30 seconds after the match begins, down from 60. So that means that you can now much faster go for your camps. I always talk about how on Garden of Terror, for example, you have a huge amount of mercenary camps. And on essentially every single map that we have in the pool, at the 1 minute mark, you see people immediately start jumping on those mercenary camps and trying to lock them in. This is going to be an interesting change that accelerates the early game a little bit. So now we have those much faster in play. And that is, I actually like this as a change. It just accelerates things slightly. You don't have to wait for that 1 minute mark again, because let's face it, after we have that little brawl in the middle where oftentimes there's a quick 5 versus 5, usually in the very early stages of the game, it's a bit of a wait and see phase. You're waiting either for the mercenaries to spawn or you wait for the first objective to pop up, and this one is just accelerating this slightly. Now, we have another one where the small experience globes will now vanish if no allied hero is within 15 radius of the globe. I gotta say, anything that makes it a little bit more difficult to get experience, I'm in favor for. If you remember, when Blizzard actually killed HGC, just shortly after, there was a patch that hit where not only we had those XP globes coming in, but we also had, for example, the movement speed of the heroes being a little bit increased, which made rotations between the lanes much easier. And before, when we're looking at the HGC days, you needed to be a lot more diligent about your lane presence. If you didn't catch those minion waves on the lane, you lost out on a lot of experience, which gave macro teams a big advantage. Teams that were very crisp in their rotations and really had a good map awareness would usually walk away with a bigger experience lead than the opponents, and could then use that in the mid and the late game to really overpower them. And teams that were sloppy in their rotations were punished for that. Now, if you make it now so that it's not that easy anymore to just simply rotate in and pick those globes up, that's already a big one. This really forces players to play a little bit smarter, pay more attention to what's happening in the game, on the minimap, and then just adjust their play accordingly. So anything that rewards good teams and players that are really aware of what's going on in the global context is, in my book, already quite nice. We have structure health also increased by 12.5%, which is actually quite a bit. Now, I was first a little bit skeptical. Again, it looks a little bit, again, like Blizzard is trying to extend the games, but one of the things that obviously a lot of people have been complaining about in the past is that we are ending up in a situation where a team is just really successful in the early and the mid game. They walk away with a 2-3 level lead, and then towards the end they are not able to finish. They're taking a lot of structures down, but the opponent makes it to level 20. Now it's even talents. One big team fight. The team that was leading the entire game loses, gets wiped, and their opponent just walks through the fort, through the keep, and goes straight for the core. This is going to be a lot harder right now. So it is a lot more difficult now to end the game straight after a wipe than before. And this is something where we might see calls go wrong when teams are trying to really just go for it. So having that is just slowing these pushes down a bit. Is it going to slow the game down too much? I don't really think too much, especially since we have another change coming in right now that's fairly interesting, which will be our next one. So when a hero attacks an enemy structure with a basic attack, minions near the building become inspired and gain 35% attack speed and movement speed for 3 seconds. It doesn't affect illusions or summons, but that's super interesting, because that means if you are now, for example, on the side lane and you are alone, you're attacking, your opponent... Let's say, for example, you face off against Dehaka. Dehaka decided that he's needed in a team fight. He burst to the other side of the map, and you're still pushing. So this is helping you to be a lot more powerful on that lane when you're here alone. And it also helps, of course, in the context of you having wiped a team out and pushing with the entire team against structures. It just means that you will be able to take the opponent's structures out a lot faster. So there is really a bit of an attempt by Blizzard to change the way that, first of all, the solo lanes play out, in my opinion, but also how teams deal with situations around team fights and kills. We have, first of all, our change up at the top, which makes it a little bit harder to dive onto an opponent and take it out quickly. We're having the prioritization change. We have on top of that the structural health, but then we have also something that allows you to take structures out a lot faster. And this could also help you a lot when you are getting an objective. We've seen this time and time again when you're on any map at the end of the day, and your opponent is defending the objective quite well, and because it takes for you a long time to really have a single hero on a lane and then getting structural damage done, it can be that you're walking out of the objective and you haven't done as much as you thought you could. If you now split your forces a little bit and you have a hero on every single lane, then you might end up in a situation where you can really push very heavily with your own minion wave and take some structures out despite the health increase in structures. Another one, minions will now spawn exactly at the waves. I mean, again, this is a nice, cute little change for people to maybe become a little bit more aware. How often do minion waves spawn? When exactly do they spawn? If you're somebody that loves to play Ragnaros and you're playing with Lava Wave all the time, then this helps you also to time the Lava Wave. But generally speaking, they cleaned this up a little bit, so I kind of like that. Now, there's a lot more changes, specific map changes that I don't want to go over right now, but I think these general map updates are the core ones for the time being. I'm interested to see what they're going to do here. I was honestly a little bit surprised because so far Blizzard has been mainly tinkering with heroes. We haven't seen a change that will be as impactful as this in a long time. Now, I know that a few of you guys are getting their hopium up, but for me personally, I don't believe in Blizzard doing too much here until we get some actual new content, like a new map, a new hero, or anything of the sorts into the game itself. But I'm really curious what you guys think. So when you're looking at these changes, what is Blizzard's idea here? What are they trying to do? And do you like this? What kind of impact do you think this is going to have, not only on the competitive scene, but also when we're talking about your solo experience playing online? So again, check those out a little bit. I will link them in the description, and let me know in the comments what you think about the patch. What is your favorite change, and how do you think this will impact the gameplay that we're seeing in Heroes of the Storm from here on out?